Greetings Canterbury, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to winter. With the onset of those chilly months ahead, how can you avert the winter blues? Denise Saunders will be joining us later in the show to give you some very timely tips on how to survive and thrive through the long winter months. But first up, our organ donor shortage. Many people would say it's a crisis in New Zealand, but it's not new. However, what is being done from a government level to try and increase the awareness of organ donors, and also to try and ensure those that desperately need a transplant get it? Well, you may have heard of the organisation Give Life. Christchurch Father Andy Tookey is the man behind Give Life, a lobby group seeking to generate more awareness and education about the issue, and also seeking major legislative changes. And joining us is Andy Tookey. Thank you for coming in.
Good evening.
Some background, I suppose, Andy, on Give Life. What was the motivation behind setting up this group?
When my daughter was 6 weeks of age, the doctors told me that she had a liver disease, she'd need a transplant, or she would probably die by age 1 without a transplant. Now, with a transplant, I was told she'd have a 97% success rate of a normal life. And that was great. That pushed my elations up. But then I discovered that New Zealand had the lowest organ donor rate in the Western world, of just 40 organ donors for that particular year. Sure. And that was the lowest in the Western world then, and it's now dropped down to 25, so we're in third world statistics. And so I set about trying to find out why we were so low, and opened a whole can of worms in the meantime.
Wow. How is your daughter getting on, by the way?
She's doing very well. She's 5 at the moment, and she's not on the transplant list yet, but she doesn't require it yet, so she's one of the 2% who do well after age 1 or 2.
So she has really defied the medical prognosis.
Yeah, I've not found anywhere else an internet search. I've only found 2 people in the world so far who've gone past age 18 without needing a transplant for this disease, but hopefully she'll be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So on an international level, our rate is dire, particularly on a first world comparison. Why is it so bad?
Well, just so that people are aware of how we compare internationally, we, as I said, had 25 organ donors last year. That's out of 29,000 deaths in New Zealand. Now, we are just above Mexico, but below Iceland when it comes to organ donors. We have just 6 organ donors per million of population. At the top end of the scale is Spain, with 35 donors per million, and I think the US is at 22. So there's a long way we could be going to improve the situation.
Now, obviously your group has a whole lot of aims in terms of, in an ideal world, what you would like to see different. Can we just address some misunderstandings for starters? What do you think, from a public perception point of view, are the biggest myths surrounding organ donors?
Myths, there's quite a few myths. The problem is when you go for your driving licence, you're going for your driving licence, you're not going to be an organ donor, and you're presented with those boxes, do you want to be an organ donor, yes or no? There's no prior information, so people don't know anything about it, so often they'll tick no because of some myth they've heard. And one of the most common ones is people think that if the doctors know you're an organ donor, they'll perhaps not try so hard to save your life.
Right, yeah.
There's quite a few other myths, but a lot of problems with the driving licence in that you only have the option of ticking to be a donor, yes or no. Now, many people I speak to say they would be a donor and donate most of their organs, but they're a bit squeamish about their eyes. Mm-hmm. So they don't have that option of just excluding that, and so they have to tick no.
Yeah. And when it comes to general awareness over, well, one, the shortage of organ donors in New Zealand, and the high chances of improbability that you would get one quick smart if you needed one, what needs to change there?
There's quite a few things that cause the low donor rate in New Zealand. I think the most important thing is a public awareness campaign, so that people will think about it, will talk to their family, and will hopefully sign up as organ donors should the situation arise. In New Zealand, you're more likely to need a transplant than become an organ donor. It's quite a strict criteria to become an organ donor. You have to die in an intensive care unit, and it has to be of a head injury or similar. You can't die in a car crash, and most people think you can, at the roadside and become an organ donor. It just doesn't work like that.
I understand that from a government level, you are extremely concerned there is no taxpayer-funded awareness campaign or education campaign, right?
Yeah, the Ministry of Health have fought this for many years. They've said that there is no evidence that a public awareness campaign would improve the organ donor rate, and so they refuse to put any money into it. And of course we argue that they seem to think that it works for drink driving commercials, seatbelt commercials, but it won't work for organ donor commercials. And international evidence, as we discussed before the programme, shows that public awareness is the main factor.
Sure. And there was a certain hoax TV show that certainly sparked a lot of attention, wasn't there?
That's
from
right.
The Netherlands.
It's been... it was a big controversy over this show where the woman would have to decide where her organs went when she died, as she was terminally ill. Yeah. It's caused controversy all over the world. It turned out to be a hoax, but the result of that was, since that programme just last week, that over 50,000 people have requested application forms to be an organ donor.
Wow. What about the medical fraternity? You know, for example, doctors who work in intensive care, are they proactive when it comes to organ donor opportunities?
Well, I have an issue with that. They say they're pro-organ donor campaign stuff, but we're losing a lot of organ donors. They're against every suggestion that's been put forward so far. They've been to Parliament, a select committee, saying they're against a register, and in fact they told the select committee that if a register was formed, they would ignore the register and they would ignore the law of making it legally binding. And they do miss a lot of opportunities in intensive care, and that's something I hope we can turn around. Yeah.
What about live donors? And I suppose one of the most high-profile examples recently would be Grant Kiriyama with respect to Jonah Lomu. There are not many incentives, if I can put it bluntly, from a financial perspective to assist someone becoming a live donor. Would you agree?
It's very expensive to become a live donor. You have to cover all your own expenses. I took this to Parliament and they agreed in the end that they would partially compensate live donors for loss of earnings, but it's nothing more than their bus fare, really. And I think that they should be not go out of pocket at all, and they should be paid full compensation for the money lost, loss of earnings while they're off work, and their transport and accommodation costs.
Does it strike you as quite extraordinary that on one hand, you know, we spend tens of millions of dollars a year on dialysis treatment, when surely, you know, $1 million, $2 million for financial assistance for live donors could dramatically change the outlook for all concerned?
Oh, absolutely. We're not even talking of something that's going to cost the government lots of money. We'd actually be saving the money, because it costs about $80,000 a year to keep somebody on dialysis. So we'd get them off dialysis, back into the community, back to paying taxes. Yeah. It's a drain on the health system, and it's set to go even further in the next few years, with rates of hepatitis going up and, of course, kidney disease.
Sure. We'll take a break. We are with Andy Tookey from Give Life. The website, by the way, is givelife.org.nz. We'll have a look at some of the other legislative changes on Andy's wish list very shortly.